Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Gotham Rogues. In this video we take a look at the comic book storyline Batman First Snow. In Christmas times like this, I figured it would be fitting to shine the spotlight on Gotham City's very own snowman. No, not that snowman. This snowman, Mr. Freeze. First Snow is a one-shot published in Batman Annual No. 1 of Volume 2, and it was written by Snyder, penciled by James Tynion IV, and released in 2012. It is a complete retelling of Mr. Freeze's origin for the New 52 continuity. In it, Victor Freeze escapes from Arkham Asylum and goes on a hunt to fetch his frozen wife Nora from the cryo labs of Wayne Enterprises, where she's being held. While this unfolds, we're also shown flashbacks to Victor's past, including his childhood and his early years working for Bruce Wayne as a cryogenicist, as well as of course his accident that turned him into Mr. Freeze. So this comic completely discards the beloved old classic origin established in the Batman the Animated Series episode Heart of Ice, which was later adopted into comics as well. Or maybe I shouldn't say that it discards it, but rather puts a spin on it. A very significant one though, that completely changes what kind of character Mr. Freeze is. The basics are the same. He's a cryogenicist, although now working for Wayne Enterprises, who spends company resources on finding a cure for the terminally ill and frozen woman named Nora. He then has an accident and can only live in below 0 degrees. Building a cryosuit and arming himself with an ice gun, Victor becomes the supervillain Mr. Freeze, obsessed with curing Nora, causing all kinds of trouble in the process. Sounds like Freeze, right? Well, here's the real kicker that changes everything. Nora is not actually his wife. Her name is Nora Fields, and she was born in 1943. At the age of 23, she was diagnosed with an incurable heart condition and then became the first person to undergo cryogenic stasis. She's a legend in the field of cryogenics, and Victor grew obsessed with her, coming to work at Wayne Enterprises just because Nora was held there. Mr. Freeze is known for being one of the most tragic and sympathetic villains in comics, who wants nothing else but to save his beloved wife. But here he's been depicted as a creepy stalker who's fixated on a woman he's never even actually met. That's not sympathetic, it's disturbing and frankly pathetic. Pathetic is not a word I'd like to use when describing a Batrogue, unless of course it's this guy. But here we are. The accident that turned Victor into an Iceman is also his own fault. When Bruce tried to put a stop to his crazy little project, Freeze went totally mad and threw a chair at Wayne, which then hit and disrupted containers of some sort, bathing Victor in cold chemicals. To make him further nasty and unsympathetic, it's explained that as a child, Victor used to experiment on animals, freezing parts of their bodies and then observed how they suffered. Yeah, real nice guy. To me it comes off as if Snyder hated Mr. Freeze and wanted to twist everything introduced in the animated series that made the character so good and turn him into the most unlikable loser to ever cross paths with Batman after Ten-Eyed Man. It's really spelled out in the comic as well when Batman says, "Mr. Freeze out to save his dying wife from the cruel businessman who took her away." But we both know that's a farce, Victor. That pretty much sums up the story, a perversion of Heart of Ice. When that's one of my top 5 TAS episodes, you know I don't think that highly of the story. I have to admit though that this take on Freeze is a bit interesting in the sense that Victor has fallen in love with an illusion of Nora because she was the first frozen woman. What would happen if he actually managed to bring her back? How would he react when finally getting to actually meet Nora and find out what kind of person she really is? That's a fascinating story right there that I'd like to see. If I view this version as an alternate sort of Elseworlds Mr. Freeze, I can somewhat enjoy it, but it's certainly not what I'd ever call the real Freeze. A couple of other things I want to nag about. It seems that this Freeze have actual ice powers, as in a few scenes it appears as if he's shooting ice from his body. I don't like that. He's not Killer Frost, and it makes the gun completely redundant. The other thing, the flashbacks involving Wayne Enterprises are said to have taken place 6 years ago. In those scenes, they mention Bruce just having returned from his training overseas. That means he's only been Batman for 6 years, yet he's already gone through 4 Robins, and Dick is Nightwing and a grown man. Do comic book characters suddenly age faster now instead of slower? As for the artwork, it's pretty good. Nothing special, but it does its job and is fairly nice to look at. What's not nice to look at though is Mr. Freeze himself. I can't stand the new 52 redesign of him. The mohawk and that ridiculous sleeveless cryosuit. Doesn't his arms get warm that way? What's up with the new 52 making all DC ice villains sleeveless? It was also done to Captain Cold. In conclusion, this story is not technically bad, it's just not my Mr. Freeze. By the way, I just read in an interview with Snyder that he actually regrets making Victor so unsympathetic, and he's writing a new Mr. Freeze one-shot in an issue of his All-Star Batman series. I'm very excited to see what that story is like, and how Snyder's going to portray Victor now. Speaking of Snyder and All-Star Batman, I can't wait to get my hands on the first All-Star trade next year and review it for you guys. Why I haven't been buying the single issues is because I'm from Sweden and it's just way cheaper and easier to wait for the trades to come out over here. Anyway, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.